Right now, as you listen to these words, beneath 7 miles of crushing water, in absolute darkness where the sun has never reached, something is moving, something is hunting, something is surviving in conditions that would destroy most life in seconds. The deep sea, that vast, dark world that covers more than 95% of Earth's living space, remains more mysterious to us than the surface of Mars. We've sent 12 people to walk on the moon, but only 3 have descended to the deepest point in our ocean. We have better maps of Venus, hidden beneath its toxic clouds, than we do of our own ocean floor. Perhaps you've wondered, lying in bed at night with the weight of your blanket pressed against you, what it would feel like to have an entire ocean pressing down instead. Or maybe you've stood at the beach, watching waves roll in, and realized that beneath that familiar surface lies an alien world, as foreign as any distant planet. Tonight, we're going to descend together into Earth's final frontier, not the stars above, but the abyss below. We'll meet creatures that glow like living galaxies, discover valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, and explore a world where the rules of life as we know them simply don't apply. Take a deep breath. Feel your lungs fill with air, that precious gas that becomes poison under pressure, that luxury the deep sea has never known. We're about to leave the sunlit world behind and enter a realm of eternal night, crushing pressure, and impossible life. A place where beauty and terror are often the same thing, where evolution has crafted solutions to problems we're only beginning to understand. Are you ready? Good. Our descent begins now, and with each meter down, we leave a little more of the familiar world behind. Imagine, if you can, a world without horizons. No sky above, no visible ground below, just an endless 3-dimensional space of gradually darkening blue fading to black. This is the pelagic zone, the open ocean, and it comprises 99% of Earth's habitable space. The ocean isn't just deep, it's architecturally complex, carved by forces we're only beginning to understand. Beneath the waves lie mountain ranges that dwarf the Himalayas, valleys that could swallow the Grand Canyon, and plains so vast and flat, they make the Sahara look like a sandbox. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a volcanic seam running down the Atlantic's center, is the longest mountain range on Earth. 40,000 miles of peaks and valleys, almost entirely unexplored. But unlike the mountains we know, these peaks have never known the warmth of sunlight, the touch of rain, or the green of photosynthesis. They exist in a world ruled by pressure, where every 33 feet of descent adds another atmosphere of weight. At the deepest point, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, the pressure reaches 1,086 bars. That's equivalent to having 50 jumbo jets stacked on top of you, or the weight of the Eiffel Tower, pressing down on every square inch of your body. Water itself behaves differently down there. At extreme depths, the pressure compresses water molecules, making the water about 5% denser than at the surface. It becomes thick, syrupy, resistant to movement. Swimming through it would be like trying to swim through honey, if honey could crush your lungs and force nitrogen into your bloodstream. The temperature, too, defies our expectations. While the surface ocean varies with latitude and season, the deep sea maintains a constant, near-freezing cold. Below 3,000 feet, the temperature hovers just above freezing, about 35 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 to 4 degrees Celsius. It's been this cold for millions of years, a vast refrigerator that never cycles off, preserving things that would decay in days on the surface for centuries in the deep. Our descent begins in what scientists call the euphotic zone, the sunlit layer where photosynthesis is still possible. This extends down to about 660 feet, 200 meters, though it varies with water clarity. Here, the ocean still remembers the sun. Blue light, the most penetrating wavelength, paints everything in shades of azure and turquoise. But as we descend past 200 feet, we enter the dysphotic zone, the twilight zone. Light still penetrates, but it's not enough for photosynthesis. The water here is a deep, mysterious blue, like looking at the sky just after sunset. This is where the ocean begins to keep secrets. In this twilight world, eyes begin to change. Creatures here have evolved enormous eyes to capture every photon of dying light. The giant squid's eyes can be as large as dinner plates, the biggest eyes in the animal kingdom. They need them not to hunt, but to spot the silhouettes of predators against the faint light above. By 500 feet down, the water has absorbed all the reds, oranges, and yellows. If you were to cut yourself here, your blood would look green or black. Many deep-sea creatures are colored red because, in this blue world, red is the perfect camouflage. It appears black in the absence of red light. At 1,000 feet, we reach the edge of the midnight zone, the aphotic zone, where sunlight finally surrenders to eternal darkness. Less than 1% of surface light reaches here, and below 3,300 feet, no sunlight penetrates at all, ever. This is where 90% of the ocean's volume begins, a world that has never, in billions of years, seen the sun. The deep ocean floor isn't the flat, muddy wasteland early oceanographers imagined. It's a landscape of extremes, carved by tectonics, volcanoes, and sediment flows that would terrify any land-based geologist. Abyssal plains stretch for thousands of miles, covered in sediment so fine it's like lunar dust. This sediment, called marine snow, is composed of dead plankton, fecal pellets, and organic debris that drifts down from the surface like an eternal gentle snowfall. It accumulates at about 1 centimeter per 1,000 years, slow enough that a footprint in the abyssal mud would last for millennia. Seamounts, underwater mountains, rise from these plains like islands of rock in a sea of mud. There are over 100,000 seamounts, more than 1,000 meters tall, most of them unexplored. Each is an oasis of hard substrate in the soft deep, supporting unique ecosystems that may be found nowhere else on Earth. Then there are the trenches, the scars where one tectonic plate slides beneath another. The Mariana Trench is the deepest, plunging 36,200 feet below sea level. If Mount Everest were dropped into it, its peak would still be covered by over a mile of water. These trenches are not just deep, they're dynamic, zones of seismic activity, where earthquakes reshape the seafloor, and volcanic vents spew chemicals that paradoxically support life. The Puerto Rico Trench harbors the deepest point in the Atlantic, 28,232 feet down. The Java Trench, off Indonesia, plunges to 24,460 feet. Each trench is a world unto itself, with unique species that have evolved in isolation for millions of years. In the absolute darkness of the deep sea, life makes its own light, bioluminescence. The production of light by living organisms is so common in the deep ocean that it's the rule rather than the exception. An estimated 90% of organisms below 1,500 feet can produce light. It's the most common form of communication on Earth, yet we land dwellers barely know it exists. This living light isn't like the light we know. It's cold light, produced with 96% efficiency, compared to an incandescent bulb's 3% efficiency. If we could replicate this efficiency, a city could be lit with the energy it takes to power a single building. The chemistry is elegantly simple. A compound called luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase. The reaction produces light without heat. But the ways creatures use this simple reaction are endlessly creative. Some creatures, like the anglerfish, dangle a glowing lure in front of their mouths. The light attracts prey in the darkness like moths to a flame. But here's the fascinating part. The anglerfish doesn't produce the light itself. It cultivates bacteria in its lure that glow continuously. It's a symbiotic relationship millions of years old. The bacteria get a home and nutrients. The anglerfish gets a hunting tool. In the deep sea, light is language. Different species produce different colors. Blue and green are most common because they travel farthest in water, but some creatures produce yellow, and a few can even produce red light, invisible to most deep-sea animals. The dragonfish has evolved both red photophores and eyes that can see red light, giving it a private wavelength for hunting, like having night vision goggles in a world of the blind. patterns matter too. The cookie-cutter shark has a band of photophores on its belly that perfectly mimics the faint sunlight filtering down from above, making it invisible from below, except for a small dark patch that looks like a small fish. Predators approaching from below see what appears to be easy prey, only to become prey themselves. Some creatures use light for defense. The vampire squid, when threatened, doesn't release ink. There's no point in a black cloud in a black world. Instead, it ejects a cloud of bioluminescent mucus, creating a glowing phantom to confuse predators while it escapes into the darkness. The Atolla jellyfish has perhaps the most clever defense, a burglar alarm. When attacked, it creates a pinwheel of light that spirals outward like a neon distress signal. This doesn't scare the predator. Instead, it attracts the predator's predators. It's calling for backup from something bigger and hungrier. But perhaps the most mysterious light in the ocean isn't from any creature we know. Sailors have reported seeing vast glowing wheels of light rotating beneath the surface, sometimes miles across. Satellite images have confirmed these milky seas, massive areas of ocean that glow steadily for days. Scientists believe it might be caused by massive blooms of bioluminescent bacteria, but no one knows for sure what triggers them or why they form such perfect geometric patterns. Deep-sea cameras have captured chains of light moving in ways that don't match any known creature, synchronized flashing among thousands of organisms across vast distances, light that seems to respond to observation, dimming when submarines approach. The deep sea is talking to itself in a language of light we're only beginning to learn to read. At depths where the pressure would crush a human body in milliseconds, life thrives in forms that seem designed by an alien intelligence. These aren't just adaptations. They're complete reimaginings of what life can be. Consider the barrel-eye fish, Macropina microstoma. Its skull is transparent, filled with a clear gel that allows its tubular eyes to look straight up through its own head. These eyes can rotate to look forward when it's time to eat. It lives at depths where the only light comes from above, silhouettes against the dying light. Its transparent head is the ultimate adaptation. Why have an opaque skull when you need to see in all directions? The goblin shark, a living fossil unchanged for 125 million years, has a jaw that shoots out from its face like something from a horror movie. When it detects prey with its elongated sensor-packed snout, its jaw literally explodes forward, extending up to 3% of its body length in milliseconds. It's an ambush predator in a world where ambush is the only strategy that works. The vampire squid, neither squid nor octopus but something in between, can turn itself inside out when threatened, displaying spines that make it look like an alien sea urchin. Its name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, literally means vampire squid from hell, but it's actually a gentle detritivore, feeding on marine snow. It's the only cephalopod that doesn't hunt live prey, having evolved to survive on the dead remains that drift down from above. Deep-sea gigantism is real, and we don't fully understand why. Creatures grow to sizes impossible at the surface. The giant isopod, a relative of the pillbug, grows to 20 inches long, 50 times larger than its shallow water cousins. The colossal squid, larger even than the giant squid, has eyes the size of basketballs and hooks on its tentacles that can rotate 360 degrees. The Japanese spider crab, with a leg span that can reach 12 feet, looks like something from a mecha anime, yet it moves with delicate precision across the seafloor, its long legs allowing it to stand above the soft sediment that would swallow a heavier creature. One theory for this gigantism is Kleiber's law. Larger animals have slower metabolisms relative to their size, allowing them to survive longer between meals in a food-scarce environment. Another is that the cold temperature allows for larger cell sizes and longer lifespans. The Greenland shark, living in the deep Arctic waters, can live for over 400 years, the longest-lived vertebrate we know of. One shark alive today was swimming when Shakespeare was writing plays. Every creature in the deep has solved the pressure problem differently. Fish at extreme depths have given up on swim bladders entirely, gas-filled organs would implode. Instead, they use oil-filled livers for buoyancy. Oil is incompressible, unaffected by pressure changes that would destroy air spaces. Their bodies are often gelatinous, with reduced skeletal structure. The blobfish, famous for its sad-looking face when brought to the surface, is actually perfectly adapted to its environment. At depth, the pressure gives its jelly-like body structure. It's only when removed from pressure that it collapses into the melted-looking creature we mock in memes. We're not seeing a blobfish. We're seeing what explosive decompression does to a perfectly adapted animal. Many deep-sea fish have eliminated red blood cells entirely, having blood that looks like water. In the cold, oxygen-rich deep water, they can absorb enough oxygen directly through their plasma. Their hearts are often huge relative to their body size, pumping this thin blood through bodies that work more like hydraulic systems than the flesh and bone we're familiar with. In 1977, everything we thought we knew about life on Earth changed. The submarine Alvin, exploring the Galapagos Rift, discovered hydrothermal vents, and around them, an impossible ecosystem thriving in the poison dark water. These vents spew water, heated to over 700 degrees Fahrenheit, 370 degrees Celsius by volcanic activity, loaded with hydrogen sulfide and heavy metals that would kill most life instantly. Yet around these vents cluster communities so dense, they rival tropical rainforests in biomass. Giant tube worms, 6 feet long with no mouth, no gut, no anus. White crabs carpeting the seafloor. Shrimp with eyes on their backs that see heat instead of light. The base of this ecosystem isn't photosynthesis but chemosynthesis. Bacteria convert hydrogen sulfide, toxic to most life, into energy. These bacteria live inside the tube worms, a symbiotic relationship that shouldn't exist. The worms supply the bacteria with chemicals from the vent. The bacteria supply the worms with food. These vents are like oases in a desert, but they're temporary. A vent might be active for decades or just years before the geology shifts and it dies. When it does, the entire community dies with it. The larvae of vent creatures must somehow find another vent in the vast darkness. How they do this remains one of marine biology's great mysteries. When a whale dies and sinks to the bottom, it creates an event that will shape that patch of seafloor for decades. A whale fall is like a feast in a famine, a sudden influx of nutrients in a nutrient-poor world. First come the hagfish and sleeper sharks, tearing away the soft tissue. They can consume 40 to 60 kilograms of flesh per day, but even at that rate, stripping a large whale takes months. The bones, rich with oils that most creatures can't access, can support an ecosystem for decades. Enter Osidax, the zombie worm. These worms have no mouth, no stomach, but they bore into whale bones using acid-secreting roots. They cultivate bacteria that break down the proteins and lipids in the bones, feeding the worm. Females can grow several inches long, but males are microscopic, living inside the females, sometimes dozens of them. A harem of tiny males inside each female. A single whale skeleton can support over 400 species, many found nowhere else. It's an ecosystem that exists in stepping stones across the abyssal plain, each whale fall an island of plenty, in an ocean of scarcity. Some creatures have turned the killing pressure into a weapon. The pistol shrimp, found at various depths, has a claw that snaps shut so fast it creates a cavitation bubble. When this bubble collapses, it produces a flash of light, and temperatures briefly reaching 8,500 degrees Fahrenheit, 4,700 degrees Celsius, nearly as hot as the surface of the sun. The shock wave stuns or kills small prey. It's a gun that shoots bubbles that become tiny suns. The mantis shrimp, neither mantis nor shrimp, but something wonderfully other, has clubs that strike with the force of a bullet. In the deep sea species, these clubs are even more powerful, adapted to work in the high-pressure environment. They can shatter shells that would resist any surface predator, turning the immense pressure to their advantage. The deep ocean is not silent. Hydrophones placed in the deepest trenches record a constant symphony of sounds we're only beginning to catalog. There's the background crackle of shrimp snapping, the songs of whales that carry for thousands of miles, the grinding of tectonic plates, but there are also sounds we can't explain. The bloop, an ultra-low frequency sound detected in 1997, so loud it was picked up by sensors 3,000 miles apart. It came from the southern Pacific, near the location of H.P. Lovecraft's fictional sunken city of Raleigh. While scientists eventually attributed it to ice breaking off Antarctica, it remains a reminder of how little we monitor the deep ocean's sounds. The Julia sound, a 15-second ascending tone recorded in 1999. The upsweep, a seasonal sound that's been detected since 1991, getting louder each year. The bioduck, a sound recorded for decades before we discovered it was made by Antarctic minke whales. For every sound we identify, 10 more remain mysteries. We know the deep sea harbors giants we haven't met. Sperm whale stomachs contain sucker marks from squids larger than any we've captured. Massive shapes on sonar that don't match any known creature. In 2022, scientists photographed what might be the longest animal ever recorded, a 150-foot siphonophore, a string of pearls creature that's actually a colony of thousands of individuals. The colossal squid we know of might be juveniles. The giant Pacific octopus we've studied might have deeper, larger cousins we've never seen. Every deep-sea expedition finds new species, not just new types of known creatures, but entirely new body plans, new ways of being alive. Statistical models suggest we've discovered less than 5% of deep-sea species. That means for every bizarre creature we know about, 20 more are waiting in the darkness. Some scientists estimate there could be millions of species in the deep ocean, most of them microscopic, but some of them giants that have avoided our nets and cameras. Exploring the deep sea is harder than exploring space. In space, you need to contain 1 atmosphere of pressure. In the Challenger Deep, you need to resist 1,086 atmospheres. In space, you can use solar panels for power. In the deep sea, there's no renewable energy source. The Trieste, which took Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard to the Challenger Deep in 1960, had walls 5 inches thick and a window made of a single piece of acrylic weighing 200 pounds. They could only stay at the bottom for 20 minutes. When James Cameron repeated the feat in 2012, his submarine's pressure sphere shrank by 3 inches under the pressure. Modern deep-sea robots face the same challenges. Electronics must be pressure compensated or enclosed in spheres thick enough to resist implosion. Cameras need lights powerful enough to pierce the darkness, but efficient enough not to drain batteries in minutes. Every component that works fine at the surface becomes a potential failure point under pressure. Deep-sea creatures produce compounds that don't exist anywhere else on Earth. The vampire squid creates a bioluminescent mucus, unlike any other biological material. Deep-sea sponges produce chemicals that show promise as cancer treatments. Bacteria from hydrothermal vents create enzymes that work at temperatures that would destroy normal proteins. The cone snail, found at various depths, produces venom containing hundreds of different toxins. One of these, zaconotide, is now used as a painkiller 1,000 times more powerful than morphine but non-addictive. Each species of cone snail produces a different cocktail of toxins, a pharmaceutical library we're only beginning to read. Deep-sea sharks produce an antibiotic compound in their skin that prevents infection despite living in bacteria-rich environments. The Greenland shark's blood contains antifreeze compounds that allow it to survive in sub-zero waters without its blood freezing. These creatures are swimming pharmacies, each one potentially holding the key to medical breakthroughs. In 2019, Victor Vescovo descended to the Challenger Deep and found something that shouldn't exist there: a plastic bag. At the deepest point on Earth, 7 miles down, human pollution had arrived first. Microplastics have been found in every deep-sea sample ever tested. They're in the stomachs of amphipods from the Mariana Trench. They're embedded in the seafloor sediment. They're even incorporated into the shells of deep-sea organisms. We've contaminated a world we've barely explored. The deep sea, once thought too remote to be affected by human activity, is proving to be a sink for our waste. Heavy pollutants settle there. Plastic breaks down into ever smaller pieces but never truly disappears. The very remoteness that protected the deep sea for billions of years now makes it impossible to clean. The deep sea floor contains treasures that make gold seem common. Polymetallic nodules, potato-sized rocks containing manganese, cobalt, copper, and nickel, carpet vast areas of the abyssal plains. These nodules grow incredibly slowly, about 1 centimeter per million years, and they're home to unique ecosystems. Deep-sea mining companies are developing technology to harvest these nodules. They propose giant machines that would crawl across the seafloor, vacuuming up nodules and sediment, processing them on ships and dumping the waste back into the ocean. The impact would be catastrophic, destroying habitats that took millions of years to develop and creating sediment plumes that could smother life across vast areas. Hydrothermal vents are also targets, rich in gold, silver, and rare earth elements. But mining a vent would destroy an ecosystem that might harbor the cure for cancer, or the solution to antibiotic resistance. We're preparing to destroy libraries we haven't read, burning books in languages we don't understand. The deep ocean is Earth's largest carbon sink, absorbing about 25% of the CO2 we emit, but it's reaching its limit. As the ocean absorbs CO2, it becomes more acidic. This acidification is already affecting deep-sea corals, dissolving the shells of pteropods, sea butterflies that form the base of many food chains. The ocean's conveyor belt, the global circulation that brings oxygen to the deep, is slowing due to climate change. Some models predict it could shut down entirely, turning vast areas of the deep ocean into dead zones. The very system that has made deep-sea life possible for millions of years is failing. Rising temperatures are reaching the deep. The abyssal waters, stable for millennia, are warming. This affects the metabolism of deep-sea creatures evolved for specific temperatures. It's changing the chemistry of the water, the availability of nutrients, the very nature of the deep-sea ecosystem. The deep sea teaches us that pressure isn't just destructive, it's creative. It has forced life to find solutions we never imagined. Transparent heads, detachable jaws, light without heat, bodies without bones. Every adaptation is a masterpiece of engineering that took millions of years to perfect. This has implications beyond biology. When we face pressure in our own lives, we often see it as purely negative. But the deep sea shows us that pressure can force innovation, create beauty, inspire solutions that wouldn't exist in easier conditions. The most extraordinary life on Earth exists in the most extreme conditions. In the eternal darkness of the deep sea, many of the advantages that dominate surface ecosystems disappear. Camouflage based on color becomes meaningless. Speed matters less when everything moves slowly in the cold. When size can be a disadvantage when food is scarce. Instead, the deep sea rewards patience, efficiency, and cooperation. Many deep-sea creatures have developed symbiotic relationships that would seem impossible on the surface. Predator and prey sometimes share the same adaptation, both producing the same color of bioluminescence, making it harder for other predators to distinguish between them. It's a democracy of darkness, where the rules that govern surface life are suspended. The ugly can thrive, the slow can survive, the weird is normal. It's a reminder that our surface world values, beauty, speed, strength, are not universal truths, but local adaptations to local conditions. Time moves differently in the deep sea. Without day or night, without seasons, many creatures live in a temporal void. Some deep-sea sharks have been found with harpoon wounds from the 1800s, still swimming, still hunting. The cold slows metabolism to such a degree that lifespans stretch beyond human comprehension. Deep-sea corals grow so slowly that colonies can be thousands of years old. A black coral colony off Hawaii has been aged at 4,265 years old. It was already ancient when the pyramids were built. These creatures experience time on a scale we can barely imagine, their lives spanning human civilizations. This challenges our crisis-driven timeline. While we panic about quarterly earnings and election cycles, the deep sea operates on geological time. A deep-sea ecosystem might take centuries to develop and seconds to destroy. It's a reminder that our temporal perspective is narrow, our long-term thinking shockingly short-term by deep-sea standards. Their quote is a unique aesthetic to deep-sea life that challenges our notions of beauty. The anglerfish, with its needle teeth and death lamp, is hideously beautiful. The gulper eel, with its massive mouth and whip-like tail, is elegantly grotesque. These creatures are not trying to be beautiful by our standards. They're perfectly designed for their world. This has profound implications for how we judge beauty and worth. The deep sea doesn't care about our aesthetic preferences. It rewards function over form, or rather, it shows us that perfect function has its own terrible beauty. Every creature is a perfect solution to the problem of existence under impossible conditions. We're attracted to deep-sea creatures precisely because they're so alien, so other. They remind us that life is far more creative than we imagined, that beauty has infinite forms, that our narrow definitions of acceptable and attractive are just that, narrow. The deep sea is the loneliest place on Earth. Creatures might go their entire lives without encountering another of their species, except to mate. Some deep-sea octopi have been observed brooding their eggs for 4.5 years, never leaving, never eating, slowly starving to death, to ensure their offspring survive. This profound isolation has shaped behavior in unique ways. When deep-sea creatures do meet, the encounter is often violent or sexual, sometimes both. There's no energy for casual interaction, no room for social niceties. Every meeting must have a purpose: eat, mate, or flee. Yet in this loneliness, we see dedication that puts our social bonds to shame. The male anglerfish, finding a female in the vast darkness, bites into her and never lets go. His body fuses with hers, his organs dissolve, until he becomes nothing more than a pair of gonads attached to her body, nourished by her blood. It's the ultimate commitment, a love story written in flesh and dissolution. Every deep-sea expedition reminds us how little we know. We've mapped more of Mars than our own ocean floor. We've discovered less than 5% of what lives in the deep. Every net hauled up contains new species. Every dive reveals new behaviors. Every measurement challenges what we thought we knew. This ignorance should humble us. We're preparing to mine the deep sea when we don't even know what lives there. We're changing the chemistry of the ocean without understanding how deep-sea ecosystems will respond. We're the toddlers with hammers in a china shop we can't even see. The deep sea is our planet's unconscious, the vast unknown that exists beneath the surface of our awareness. Like the human unconscious, it affects everything: climate, weather, the very air we breathe, yet we understand almost nothing about it. We live on a water planet, but behave like desert dwellers, ignorant of the ocean that makes our existence possible. Humans have dreamed of colonizing the ocean floor since Jules Verne. Jacques Cousteau's conch-shell experiments in the 1960s proved humans could live underwater for weeks. Navy's Sealab projects pushed deeper, though Sealab Thur ended in tragedy, when Aquanaut Barry Cannon died from carbon dioxide poisoning. Today, the only permanent underwater habitat is Aquarius Reef Base, operating at just 62 feet deep off Florida. The challenges of deep-sea habitation remain enormous. Beyond a few hundred feet, humans can't breathe compressed air without risking nitrogen narcosis. Helium-oxygen mixtures work deeper, but make communication difficult and suck heat from the body. The pressure itself becomes the enemy. At 2,000 feet, the pressure is 60 times surface normal. A seal failure doesn't mean a leak, it means instant implosion. Windows become impossibly thick. Every pipe, every wire, every connection becomes a potential catastrophic failure point. Yet some envision deep-sea cities, protected by pressure-resistant domes, powered by hydrothermal energy, fed by deep-sea aquaculture. They imagine humans adapting to pressure as deep-sea creatures have, perhaps even genetically modifying ourselves for depth. It's science fiction now, but so was flying. Once. Where humans can't go, robots increasingly can. Remotely operated vehicles (ROVs) now explore depths that would crush any submarine. Autonomous underwater vehicles (AUVs) map the seafloor with sonar, collect samples, and return to the surface without human control. These robots are becoming more sophisticated. Some mimic deep-sea creatures, soft robots that can squeeze through tight spaces, robots that undulate like eels, robots that emit light to communicate. They're equipped with cameras that can see in near total darkness, arms gentle enough to collect delicate organisms, sensors that can taste the water's chemistry. But robots have limitations. They can't react to the unexpected the way a human explorer can. They can't experience the awe of discovery, or the intuition that something deserves closer look. They're tools, not explorers, and some argue we're losing something essential by exploring by proxy. The deep sea is inspiring new technologies. The bioluminescence of deep-sea creatures is being engineered into plants that glow in the dark, potentially replacing streetlights. The pressure-resistant proteins of deep-sea bacteria are being used to create materials that work in extreme conditions. The natural antifreeze of Arctic fish is being studied for organ preservation. The extreme pressure tolerance of deep-sea creatures is informing new designs for spacecraft and deep drilling equipment. The efficient swimming of deep-sea jellies is inspiring new propulsion systems. Some scientists even propose that deep-sea adaptations could help us colonize space. The pressure changes, the isolation, the resource scarcity, these are problems both environments share. The solutions life found in the deep might be the solutions we need among the stars. Every culture with an ocean has myths about what lurks beneath. The Kraken of Scandinavian folklore, the Leviathan of Hebrew scripture, the Bakunawa of Philippine mythology, all speak to a primal fear of the deep. These myths weren't entirely wrong. Giant squids do exist, growing to 43 feet long. Colossal squids are even larger. The Pacific sleeper shark can reach 23 feet. The Japanese spider crab seems designed by nightmare. Reality in the deep sea often exceeds mythology. The Greeks believed the ocean was a river, Oceanus, that circled the world, with the deepest parts leading to the underworld. The Norse told of Jörmungandr, the world's serpent that lay at the ocean's bottom, so large it could grasp its own tail. These myths recognized the ocean's depth as a boundary between worlds, a place where normal rules didn't apply. Our modern myths about the deep are no less fantastic. Cryptozoologists search for surviving megalodons, the 60-foot prehistoric sharks. They point to the coelacanth, thought extinct for 66 million years until one was caught in 1938, as proof that the deep harbors living fossils. Every blurry photo of something large and undefined becomes evidence of sea monsters. The bloop becomes proof of creatures larger than whales. Sonar shadows become prehistoric plesiosaurs. We want to believe the deep holds monsters, because in a way, it does, just not the ones we imagine. The real monsters of the deep are more terrifying because they're real. The goblin shark with its shooting jaw. The frilled shark, unchanged for 80 million years. The giant isopod, like something from an alien movie. We don't need to invent sea monsters. Evolution has done it for us. The deep sea challenges our philosophy as much as our technology. It's a world that exists without us, indifferent to us, older than us. It doesn't need us, and for most of history, we didn't even know it existed. This indifference is both terrifying and liberating. The deep sea doesn't care about our politics, our economics, our social media. It operates on principles older than consciousness, following rules written in DNA and pressure, chemistry and time. It's a reminder that the universe doesn't revolve around us, that we're a recent and possibly temporary addition to a story billions of years in the telling. Yet we're the only species we know of that can appreciate the deep sea's mystery, the only ones who can wonder at bioluminescence or marvel at pressure adaptation. We're the universe's way of looking at itself, even into its darkest depths. that carries a responsibility to understand, to preserve, to respect what we find in the darkness. We quote on the verge of a deep-sea revolution. New materials like metallic glass and graphene promise submarines that can reach any depth. Quantum sensors could detect life through miles of water. AI-powered robots could explore autonomously for months, learning as they go. Gene sequencing is revealing the relationships between deep-sea creatures, showing how life colonized the abyss. Environmental DNA, eDNA, sampling lets us detect what lives in the deep without catching it. We can now identify species from the genetic traces they leave in the water. Satellite technology is mapping the ocean floor through gravity anomalies. Autonomous underwater gliders are creating a global ocean observation system. Deep-sea webcams are bringing the abyss to anyone with an internet connection. The deep is becoming less remote, even as it remains physically inaccessible to most of us. The deep sea faces threats it has never encountered in its billion-year history. Climate change, pollution, mining and overfishing are reaching into the abyss. We're destroying ecosystems we haven't even discovered, causing extinctions of species we've never seen. Some propose the deep sea should be declared a global commons, protected by international treaty. Others argue for deep-sea reserves, areas off limits to human exploitation. But enforcement at depth is nearly impossible. How do you patrol an area that covers half the planet and extends miles down? The challenge is making people care about a world they'll never see. It's hard to love what you don't know, hard to protect what seems alien. Yet the deep sea is essential to Earth's climate, chemistry, and life. What happens in the abyss affects the air we breathe, the weather we experience, the food we eat. The deep sea poses a fundamental question. Do we have the right to exploit what we don't understand? Every other environment we've entered, we've damaged. Every resource we've found, we've depleted. The deep sea might be our last chance to do better, to explore without exploiting, to understand without destroying. This requires a new kind of thinking, one that values existence over exploitation, mystery over mastery. It requires us to admit that some things might be more valuable unknown than known, more precious preserved than profited from. It's a hard sell in a world that measures value in dollars, but the deep sea doesn't deal in currency we understand. There's something about the deep sea that calls to the human spirit. Maybe it's the last frontier on Earth, the place where "here be dragons" is still literally true. Maybe it's the humility it enforces, the reminder that we're small and temporary. Maybe it's the beauty of the alien, the attraction of the other. When I first saw footage from the deep sea, I couldn't sleep, not from fear, but from wonder. The idea that such creatures existed on the same planet, that such environments were real, not science fiction, changed how I saw everything. If the anglerfish is possible, what else is possible? If life thrives at crushing pressure in total darkness, where can't it exist? The deep sea makes me feel both insignificant and privileged. Insignificant because it exists without reference to humanity. Privileged because I live in the brief moment of history when we can know it exists. Our ancestors could only imagine what lay beneath the waves. Our descendants might find the deep sea dead. We live in the narrow window when we can discover and potentially preserve Earth's last frontier. Sometimes I dream I'm sinking, not drowning but descending, watching the light fade from blue to black. In these dreams I can breathe water, feel the pressure as comfort not threat. I meet the creatures of the deep as equals, understanding their bioluminescent language, seeing the beauty in their alien forms. These dreams feel more real than real, more true than true. They're reminders that consciousness is broader than human consciousness, that intelligence takes forms we don't recognize, that beauty exists in spectrums we can't see. The deep sea dreams in ways we can't imagine, and sometimes if we're lucky we dream of the deep. Knowing the deep sea exists comes with responsibility. We can't unknow what we've learned, can't pretend the abyss is empty. Every piece of plastic we use might end up in the Mariana Trench. Every ton of CO2 we emit acidifies the deep ocean. Every species we never discover but drive extinct is a library burned, a possibility erased. This knowledge is heavy, like the pressure of the deep itself, but it's also empowering. We're the first generation that can see the deep sea and the last that can save it. That's a unique position in history, a responsibility and an opportunity that will never come again. As we rise from the depths of our journey, passing back through the layers of darkness into light, we carry with us images that will never leave us. The anglerfish's patient hunger, the tube worm's impossible existence, the vampire squid's defensive ballet, the cookie-cutter shark's perfect camouflage. We've seen a world that operates on different principles, where the rules we take for granted don't apply, where pressure creates rather than destroys, where darkness illuminates, where isolation breeds dedication, where the impossible is every day. The pressure decreases as we rise, that crushing weight that defines the deep sea experience, gradually releasing its grip. But something has changed in us. We've touched, if only imaginatively, a world most humans will never see. We've glimpsed the alien on our own planet, the other that shares our Earth. Breaking through the surface after our mental deep dive is like waking from a dream of drowning, except we weren't drowning, we were discovering. The familiar world looks different now. That glass of water contains molecules that have been to the deepest trenches. That seafood dinner grew from nutrients that rose from the abyss. That breeze carries oxygen produced by deep-sea photosynthesis millions of years ago. We can never look at the ocean the same way again. That flat blue surface hides vertical worlds of wonder and terror. Every wave is the ceiling of an inverted sky. Every white cap a cloud in an upside-down world where rain falls upward as marine snow and lightning flashes in bioluminescent bursts. The beach becomes a boundary between worlds, the shore a membrane between the thin layer where we live and the vast volume where we can't. We're surface tension, clinging to the skin of a water planet, while below us depth after depth harbors life we're only beginning to imagine. Despite all we've learned, the deep sea keeps its essential mystery. We've answered some questions, but opened 1,000 more. Why do some creatures grow so large? How do larvae find new vents in the vastness? What triggers the milky seas? What made the bloop? What lives in the trenches we haven't explored? These aren't questions we'll answer soon. Maybe not in our lifetimes. Maybe never. The deep sea is too vast, too hostile, too expensive to explore completely. It will keep its secrets, and perhaps that's as it should be. In an age when every corner of Earth is mapped, photographed, and catalogued, the deep sea remains truly wild, truly unknown. This mystery is a gift. It means there are still discoveries to make, still wonders to uncover, still reasons to explore. Every deep-sea expedition is a lottery ticket, a chance to see something no human has seen, to discover a new form of life, to answer questions we didn't even know to ask. The deep sea is more than a place. It's a metaphor for everything hidden, everything unconscious, everything profound. When we say an idea has depth, we're invoking the ocean. When we speak of deep thoughts or deep feelings, we're acknowledging that surfaces lie, that truth lives under pressure, in the dark. Carl Jung wrote about the collective unconscious as an ocean, with consciousness a small island rising from vast depths. The deep sea makes this metaphor literal. It's the planetary unconscious, the vast unknown that supports and shapes the thin layer of awareness we call the surface world. Going deep, whether in the ocean or ourselves, requires courage. It means leaving the familiar, facing pressure, navigating without clear reference points. But it's in the depths that we find the extraordinary, the adaptations that shouldn't work but do, the beauty that needs no audience, the life that persists against all odds. Knowing what we now know about the deep sea, we can't remain passive about its fate. Every choice we make on land affects the abyss. The plastic bag we use might end up in the Mariana Trench. The carbon we emit acidifies the deep ocean. The seafood we eat might be the last of its species. But we also have unprecedented power to protect the deep. We can create marine reserves that extend from surface to seafloor. We can develop technologies that explore without destroying. We can choose to value the deep sea for its existence, not its exploitation. We can be the generation that discovered the deep sea's wonders and preserved them, rather than the one that discovered and destroyed them. This requires a new kind of environmentalism, one that protects what we can't see, preserves what we don't fully understand, values what we can't monetize. It requires us to think beyond our terrestrial perspective, to care about places we'll never visit, to love what seems alien. As our journey ends, what remains is wonder. Wonder that life exists at such depths, under such pressure and such darkness. Wonder that evolution found solutions we never imagined. Wonder that on this small planet in the vastness of space, in the deepest trenches of the ocean, creatures generate their own light. The bioluminescence of the deep sea is a perfect metaphor for knowledge itself, creating light in darkness, signaling across the void, illuminating just enough to navigate but never enough to see everything. We are all deep-sea creatures in the ocean of existence, generating what light we can, seeking others in the darkness. Every child who dreams of sea monsters, every scientist who descends in a submersible, every person who stops to wonder what lies beneath the waves, carries on the ancient human tradition of exploring the unknown. The deep sea reminds us that Earth is not a conquered planet but a mystery we're privileged to explore. In the end, the deep sea teaches us about limits, the limits of pressure, of light, of life, of knowledge, but it also teaches us that limits are starting points, not end points. Life found a way to exist under crushing pressure. Creatures learned to make light without sun. Ecosystems developed around poison vents. If life can thrive 7 miles down in eternal darkness under pressure that would crush us instantly, then what excuse do we have for giving up when things get difficult? If blind shrimp can navigate the abyss, if jellyfish can live forever, if sharks can survive for centuries, then surely we can find ways to overcome our challenges. The deep sea is Earth's ultimate reminder that impossible is just a word we use for things we haven't understood yet. Every creature down there is an impossibility made real, a problem solved by evolution, a no turned into a yes, but differently. Now, as you return fully to your world, your room, your bed, your life at standard pressure, you might feel a kind of surface tension, a resistance to returning to the ordinary after touching the extraordinary. The deep sea has that effect. Once you've imagined the abyss, the surface seems thin, fragile, temporary, but the surface is where we live, where we love, where we make choices that affect the deep. We are creatures of the narrow band between ocean and atmosphere, evolved for this particular pressure, this particular mix of gases, this particular temperature range. We belong here, even as we dream of there. The deep sea doesn't want us to join it. It wants us to know it exists, to respect its mystery, to protect its integrity. It wants us to be what we are, the only species capable of appreciating depth without experiencing it, of loving what we cannot touch, of protecting what we cannot possess. As the last light of our journey fades, remember this. Every time you see the ocean, you're looking at the ceiling of another world. Every time you eat seafood, you're consuming atoms that have been to the abyss and back. Every time you breathe, you're inhaling oxygen that was dissolved in the deep sea, processed by creatures you'll never meet. The deep sea is not separate from us. It's part of the same planet, the same biosphere, the same story. What happens there affects us here. What we do here affects life. There, we're connected by currents we can't see, cycles we barely understand, creatures we've only begun to discover. In the absolute darkness of the deep sea, life creates its own light. In the crushing pressure, life finds its own space. In the eternal cold, life generates its own heat. If that's not a message of hope, I don't know what is. The deep sea tells us that life is more creative than we imagined, more resilient than we hoped, more beautiful than we dreamed. It tells us that darkness is not empty, pressure is not just destructive, cold is not lifeless. It tells us that on this pale blue dot in the vastness of space, in the deepest, darkest, most pressured places, magic is real. We just call it biology. Tonight, when you close your eyes, you might dream of the deep. You might see lights that aren't lights, but living creatures. You might feel pressure that isn't crushing but creative. You might sense the vast, patient, ancient presence of the abyss, older than continents, deeper than time. These dreams are echoes of racial memory, genetic whispers from when our ancestors lived in the sea. We carry the ocean in our blood. Salt water flows through our veins, the same salinity as the ancient ocean where life began. We are walking oceans, temporary arrangements of seawater that learn to think. The deep sea dreams through us, remembers through us, explores itself through our curiosity. Every question we ask about the abyss is the abyss questioning itself. Every discovery we make is the deep sea discovering itself. We are the universe's way of looking into its own depths, and what we see looking back is wonder itself. As you drift toward sleep, feeling the gentle pressure of your blanket, remember the creatures thriving under the weight of miles of water. As you navigate the pressures of your life, work, relationships, responsibilities, remember that pressure creates diamonds, that the most beautiful adaptations come from the most challenging environments. The deep sea promises us that there are solutions we haven't imagined to problems we think are unsolvable. It shows us beauty in forms we don't recognize, success in strategies we never considered, life in places we thought were dead. We are all deep sea creatures in our own way, navigating darkness, dealing with pressure, seeking light. The difference is, we have a choice. We can create our own light, or remain in darkness. We can adapt to pressure, or be crushed by it. We can explore our depths, or remain on the surface. A fathom, 6 feet, the span of outstretched arms, was how sailors measured depth before sonar. It's a human measurement, based on the human body, our attempt to understand depth in terms of ourselves. But the ocean's deepest point is over 6,000 fathoms down, beyond our ability to comprehend in body lengths. This is the final lesson of the deep sea. Some things are bigger than human comprehension, older than human history, deeper than human understanding. And that's okay. That's better than okay. It's essential. We need mystery. We need wonder. We need to know that there are still depths to explore, still questions to ask, still lights in the darkness we haven't seen. The deep sea is patient. It has waited billions of years. It can wait a little longer. It will outlast us, as it has outlasted countless species before us. But right now, in this brief moment of geological time, we have the privilege of knowing it exists, the technology to explore it, the responsibility to protect it. What we do with that privilege, that technology, that responsibility, will define us as a species. Will we be the generation that discovered the deep sea's wonders only to destroy them? Or will we be the ones who recognized the treasure in the darkness and chose to preserve it? The choice is ours, but the deep sea isn't waiting for our decision. It continues its ancient rhythms, the marine snow falling, the vents erupting, the creatures glowing in the darkness. It continues to be what it has always been, a world of pressure and possibility, darkness and light, impossibility made real. And now, as our journey truly ends, as we break through the surface of this story into the air of your everyday life, take a deep breath. Feel your lungs fill with air, that mixture of gases that would be toxic at depth. Feel the absence of pressure, the lightness we take for granted. See the light, whether from sun or lamp, that illuminates your world. You are a surface creature, adapted for this thin layer between earth and sky, but you now carry within you knowledge of the depths, images of the abyss, wonder at the deep. You know that beneath every ocean surface lies an inverted universe, that in the deepest darkness life creates light, that under the greatest pressure life finds a way. That knowledge changes you. You can't unknow the deep sea. You can't unsee the anglerfish, unthink the vampire squid, unimagine the hydrothermal vents. They're part of you now, swimming in the deep sea of your consciousness, glowing in the darkness of your dreams. Welcome back to the surface, but remember the depths. Remember that most of our planet is deep ocean. Remember that in the darkness life makes its own light. Remember that under pressure, life doesn't just survive, it thrives, it evolves, it creates solutions we never imagined. And remember this, every time you think something is impossible, somewhere in the deep sea, a creature is doing it anyway. The deep sea is not below us, it's within us. We are mostly water, after all, and water remembers everything, every pressure, every depth, every journey from surface to abyss, and back again. Sleep well, dream deep, and may your own darkness be filled with bioluminescent wonder. The abyss gazes also into you, and what it sees is light. In the deep sea, where sound travels strangely, and light doesn't travel at all, chemistry becomes language. Creatures communicate through molecules, releasing complex chemical signatures that drift through the water like invisible smoke signals. These pheromones can carry messages for miles, unaffected by the pressure that distorts sound, unchanged by the darkness that swallows light. The hagfish, that ancient slime-producing scavenger, releases a chemical plume when it finds a whale fall. This signal can attract other hagfish from miles away, creating feeding frenzies that strip whale carcasses to bone. But the chemistry is more sophisticated than simple attraction. Different molecules indicate the freshness of the carcass, the size of the feast, even the presence of predators. Deep-sea sharks have ampullae of Lorenzini, electroreceptors, so sensitive they can detect the electrical fields generated by muscle contractions from prey hidden in sediment. But they also use these organs to read the electrical signatures of other sharks, interpreting emotional states and intentions through bioelectricity. It's like having a conversation in lightning, too subtle for us to perceive but clear as speech to them. Some deep-sea creatures have taken chemical communication to an art form. The deep-sea octopus can change not just its color but its chemical signature, releasing different molecules through its skin. It's believed they might use this to leave chemical notes on rocks, messages for other octopi about territory, mating availability, or danger. Imagine writing letters in perfume that only certain readers can smell, messages that fade slowly in the cold water, creating a temporary library of chemical literature. Many deep-sea creatures navigate using the Earth's magnetic field, but in the abyss, this navigation becomes eerily precise. Deep-sea rays have been tracked, following magnetic highways across the ocean floor, paths that haven't changed in millions of years. They inherit these routes genetically, born with maps encoded in their DNA. The magnetic sense in these creatures is so refined they can detect the magnetic signatures of seamounts from hundreds of miles away. Each underwater mountain has its own magnetic fingerprint, created by the cooling of volcanic rock in Earth's magnetic field, millions of years ago. To a deep-sea ray, the ocean floor isn't a desert of mud, but a landscape of magnetic beacons, each one unique, each one memorable. Scientists have discovered that some deep-sea fish can actually record magnetic memories. Their inner ear bones, called otoliths, contain traces of magnetite that align with the Earth's field as they grow. By examining these bones, researchers can trace where a fish has traveled throughout its life, reading its journey, like tree rings. The fish carries its autobiography, written in magnetic ink. This magnetic sense might explain one of the deep sea's mysteries, how creatures find specific locations in the vast darkness. Hydrothermal vents, with their unique mineral compositions, create magnetic anomalies. Whale falls, as they decompose and create chemical reactions, generate electrical fields. The deep sea might be crisscrossed with invisible highways and signposts that we're only beginning to detect. In the sunlit surface ocean, energy is abundant. Photosynthesis captures sunlight, creating the base of the food web. But in the deep sea, energy is the scarcest resource, and life has evolved extraordinary strategies to acquire and conserve it. The vampire squid has perfected energy conservation to an art. It can switch its metabolism to near zero, essentially entering suspended animation when food is scarce. In this state, it uses less energy than any other deep-sea cephalopod, surviving on marine snow, the organic debris that drifts down from above. It's the only known cephalopod that doesn't need to hunt live prey, having evolved to be the ocean's patient recycler. But patience has its limits. When a food bonanza arrives, a dead whale, a school of lanternfish, a swarm of krill, the deep sea transforms from a monastery to a madhouse. Creatures that normally move in slow motion explode into activity. Six-gill sharks, usually languid drifters, become fierce predators. Isopods that typically scavenge for scraps gorge themselves until they can barely move. This feast or famine economy has created remarkable adaptations. The black swallower can consume fish twice its length and 10 times its mass, its stomach stretching like a balloon. Sometimes it bites off more than it can digest. Specimens have been found floating dead at the surface, killed by the decomposition gases of their own oversized meals. It's a reminder that in the deep sea, greed can literally be fatal. The gulper eel takes a different approach. Its massive mouth can engulf prey as large as itself, but it can also unhinge its jaw to filter feed on small organisms. It's the Swiss Army knife of deep-sea feeding, ready for whatever opportunity the darkness provides. Its tail has a bioluminescent organ that might attract prey, turning the eel into both trap and hunter. In an energy-scarce environment, theft becomes a survival strategy. Parasitism in the deep sea has evolved to levels that would seem like science fiction if they weren't scientific fact. The tongue-eating louse, Cymothoa exigua, enters fish through their gills, attaches to the tongue, and drinks its blood until the tongue atrophies and falls off. Then the parasite replaces the tongue, attaching itself to the stub and functioning as a prosthetic tongue for the rest of the fish's life. The fish can still eat, it just has to share every meal with the creature that stole its tongue. Deep-sea lampreys are vampires of the abyss, attaching to larger fish with suction cup mouths filled with rings of teeth. They rasp through scales and skin, secreting an anticoagulant to keep the blood flowing. Some deep-sea fish have been found with dozens of lamprey scars, living maps of survived attacks. But perhaps the strangest thieves are the Kleptocnidae, deep-sea jellyfish, that steal the stinging cells of other creatures. They eat Portuguese man-o'-wars and incorporate the stinging cells into their own tentacles, becoming armed with weapons they didn't evolve. It's biological piracy, stealing another species' evolutionary innovation. In the vast, dark expanse of the deep sea, finding a mate is like finding a specific grain of sand in all the world's beaches while blindfolded. The odds are so astronomical that deep-sea creatures have evolved reproductive strategies that seem desperate, bizarre, or brilliantly practical, depending on your perspective. The anglerfish's solution is perhaps the most extreme sexual dimorphism on Earth. Females can grow to the size of a football, while males never exceed a few inches. When a tiny male finds a female in the vast darkness, guided by her species-specific pheromones, he doesn't just mate with her. He bites into her skin and releases an enzyme that digests his mouth and her body wall, fusing them at the blood vessel level. Over time, the male's body degenerates, his eyes shrink and disappear, his internal organs dissolve. Eventually, he becomes nothing more than a pair of gonads attached to the female, nourished by her blood, releasing sperm when she releases eggs. Some females have been found with 8 males attached, a harem of parasitic partners reduced to their most essential function. It's tempting to see this as a horror story, but it's actually a love story written by evolution. In the vast darkness, where finding a mate twice is nearly impossible, the male ensures he'll never lose her again. He gives up his independence for guaranteed reproductive success. The female gets sperm on demand without having to search for another mate. In the economics of the deep sea, it's a bargain both parties accept. Many deep-sea fish are sequential hermaphrodites, changing sex based on circumstances. The deep-sea hatchetfish starts life as a male and becomes female as it grows larger. This makes evolutionary sense. Small males can produce plenty of sperm, while larger females can produce more eggs. Some species are simultaneous hermaphrodites, possessing both male and female organs. When two meet, they can both fertilize and be fertilized, doubling their reproductive success from a single encounter. In the sparsely populated deep, this strategy maximizes every meeting. The deep-sea lizardfish takes this even further. They can self-fertilize if they can't find a mate, cloning themselves rather than dying without reproducing. It's not ideal. Sexual reproduction provides genetic diversity that helps species adapt. But in the deep sea, something is better than nothing, and a clone is better than extinction. Many deep-sea creatures are broadcast spawners, releasing eggs and sperm into the water and hoping they meet. This seems impossibly optimistic in the vast ocean, but they've evolved tricks to improve the odds. Some species synchronize spawning using environmental cues we don't fully understand, perhaps magnetic field fluctuations, seasonal temperature changes, or chemical signals. Suddenly, across miles of darkness, thousands of individuals release their gametes simultaneously, creating clouds of eggs and sperm that have a fighting chance of meeting. Deep-sea corals have been observed spawning in response to seasonal changes in ocean currents that are barely detectable to our instruments. Somehow, in the eternal darkness, where there are no days or seasons as we know them, they know when the moment is right. They release bundles of eggs and sperm that float upward, mixed by currents into a reproductive soup. The larvae that result from these unions face impossible odds. They must find food in the nutrient-poor water. They must avoid predators they can't see. They must somehow, in the vast three-dimensional darkness, find the right habitat to settle. That any survive at all seems miraculous. That enough survive to maintain populations across millions of square miles of ocean floor is a testament to life's persistence. The deep sea is a time machine, harboring creatures that have remained unchanged for millions of years. The lack of light, the stable temperature, the consistent pressure, these create an environment where evolution slows to a crawl. If it ain't broke, evolution doesn't fix it. The frilled shark is a perfect example, a creature that looks like a child's drawing of a sea monster, with a serpentine body, primitive gills, and a mouth full of trident-shaped teeth. It's been swimming unchanged for 80 million years. When dinosaurs ruled the land, frilled sharks were already ancient, and they've outlasted the dinosaurs by 66 million years. The vampire squid is even older, a living fossil from 300 million years ago. It's the only surviving member of its order, a lonely branch on the evolutionary tree. Every vampire squid alive today is the last of an ancient lineage, carrying genetic memories from before the first dinosaurs, before the first flowers, from when the Earth's continents were joined in the supercontinent Pangaea. These living fossils aren't primitive or unsuccessful. They're perfectly adapted to their environment, so perfectly that change would be disadvantageous. They've found an evolutionary sweet spot, and stayed there while the rest of life experimented, evolved, and often went extinct. The coelacanth, thought extinct for 66 million years until one was caught off South Africa in 1938, has become the poster child for living fossils. Its discovery shook the scientific world. Here was a creature from the age of dinosaurs, alive and unchanged. Since then, we've found two species of coelacanth, both living in deep underwater caves, both virtually identical to fossils hundreds of millions of years old. In the cold deep sea, with scarce food and low metabolic rates, everything happens slowly. Growth is measured in millimeters per decade. Reproduction might happen once in a lifetime. Death can take centuries to arrive. The Greenland shark exemplifies this slow-motion existence. Recent studies using radiocarbon dating of their eye lenses suggest some individuals are over 400 years old. A Greenland shark alive today could have been born when Shakespeare was writing plays. They don't reach sexual maturity until they're 150 years old, an entire human lifetime spent as a juvenile. These sharks grow less than a centimeter per year. They swim at about 0.76 miles per hour, earning them the nickname sleeper sharks. Their meat is toxic, filled with trimethylamine oxide and urea that acts as antifreeze, yet they're apex predators, found with seal, polar bear, and reindeer remains in their stomachs. How does such a slow creature catch such fast prey? We don't know. Deep-sea corals are even more extreme. Some black coral colonies have been aged at over 4,000 years old. They were already ancient when the pyramids were built, already old when Rome fell, already venerable when Columbus sailed. They grow so slowly that growth can only be measured using radiometric techniques. A branch, the thickness of a pencil, might represent centuries of growth. These organisms challenge our perception of time and urgency. While we panic about quarterly earnings and election cycles, a deep-sea coral experiences centuries as we experience years. A Greenland shark's heartbeat is so slow, it seems almost meditative. In the deep sea, patience isn't a virtue, it's the only survival strategy that works. The deep sea is not the silent world Jacques Cousteau imagined. Hydrophones reveal it's actually incredibly noisy, a cacophony of clicks, groans, whistles, and roars that we're only beginning to decode. The loudest sound ever recorded came from the deep ocean. The bloop, detected in 1997, was so powerful it was picked up by sensors 3,000 miles apart. It came from the southern Pacific Ocean, roughly 950 nautical miles from the Antarctic coast. The sound profile matched that of a living creature, but to produce such a sound, the creature would have to be larger than any known animal. Scientists eventually attributed the bloop to ice breaking off Antarctic glaciers, but not everyone is convinced. The location is suspicious. It's near the coordinates H.P. Lovecraft gave for Olai, the sunken city where the cosmic entity Cthulhu supposedly sleeps. While that's certainly coincidence, it reminds us that the deep ocean is one of the few places on Earth where genuine mysteries still exist. Other sounds remain unexplained. The Julia, a 15-second sound recorded on March 1, 1999, that sounds like something cooing or whining. The Upsweep, a long train of narrow-band upsweeping sounds that's been recorded since 1991, appears to be seasonal and is getting louder each year. The Whistle, a steady tone at 3.5 kHz that appears and disappears without pattern. Many deep-sea creatures use echolocation, but not the way dolphins or bats do. Deep-sea echolocation is often passive, listening to the echoes of ambient noise rather than producing their own sounds. The deep-sea hatchetfish has organs that can detect the faintest vibrations in the water. They can hear the heartbeat of prey, the movement of gills, even the turbulence created by a swimming tail. They don't need to see their prey. They can hear its life processes. Some deep-sea fish produce sounds by grinding specialized teeth, creating clicks that might function as primitive sonar. Others have gas-filled bladders they can vibrate to produce low-frequency sounds that travel for miles. These sounds are often below our hearing range, conversations in infrasound that we're only now learning to detect with specialized equipment. The sperm whale, though not exclusively a deep-sea creature, regularly dives to abyssal depths to hunt. Their echolocation clicks are the loudest biological sounds on Earth, up to 230 decibels underwater, louder than a jet engine. These clicks might do more than just locate prey. Some scientists theorize they could stun or even kill squid with focused sound beams. The sperm whale might be hunting with a sonic weapon. The deep sea is a treasure trove of biomedical compounds. The extreme conditions have forced organisms to evolve unique biochemistry that could revolutionize medicine. The Caribbean sponge Discodermia dissoluta, found at depths below 400 feet, produces discodermolide, a compound that stops cancer cells from dividing. It's currently in clinical trials as a treatment for various cancers. What's remarkable is that the sponge produces this compound not as medicine but as a defense against predators. Deep-sea bacteria around hydrothermal vents produce enzymes that function at temperatures that would destroy normal proteins. These heat-stable enzymes are revolutionizing biotechnology. Taq polymerase, isolated from a hot spring bacterium, made PCR polymerase chain reaction possible, enabling everything from COVID tests to forensic DNA analysis. The deep-sea versions are even more stable, even more useful. The venom of deep-sea cone snails contains hundreds of different compounds, each targeting specific nerve channels. One compound, ciconatid, is now used as a painkiller 1,000 times stronger than morphine, but without the addictive properties. Each species of cone snail has a different venom cocktail, and there are over 700 species. We've analyzed less than 1% of these compounds. Deep-sea sharks don't get cancer, or at least get it so rarely that we've never documented a case. Their cartilage contains compounds that inhibit blood vessel growth, potentially starving tumors. Their livers contain squalamine, an antibiotic and antiviral compound that could fight drug-resistant infections. Arctic and Antarctic deep-sea fish produce antifreeze proteins that prevent ice crystals from forming in their blood. These proteins don't just lower the freezing point, they actually bind to tiny ice crystals and prevent them from growing. This has massive medical implications. Organs for transplant could be preserved longer. Frozen foods could maintain better texture. Crops could be engineered to survive freezing temperatures. The proteins could even be used to prevent frostbite, or to create better ice cream that doesn't get freezer burn. Some deep-sea creatures go beyond antifreeze. They can actually survive being frozen solid. The Arctic ground squirrel's cousins in the deep sea can have their body temperature drop below freezing, their blood turning to slush, yet they survive. Understanding how they prevent cell damage during freezing could revolutionize cryonics, making long-term preservation of organs or even whole organisms possible. In the deep sea there are rivers flowing along the ocean floor and lakes with their own surfaces, shores and waves. These aren't made of water, but of supersaline brine, water so salty, it's denser than regular seawater, and flows along the bottom like a separate liquid. The first underwater river was discovered in the Black Sea, flowing along the seafloor with channels, floodplains and waterfalls. It carries 22,000 cubic meters of water per second. If it were on land, it would be the 6th largest river in the world. Brine lakes are even stranger. In the Gulf of Mexico, there are lakes on the ocean floor with distinct shorelines. The brine is so dense that submersibles can float on its surface while still being thousands of feet underwater. These lakes have waves when disturbed, beaches of crystallized salt, and their own unique ecosystems. The brine is toxic to most life. It's not just salty, but often contains methane and hydrogen sulfide. Yet life clusters around these lakes' edges. Mussels with chemosynthetic bacteria in their gills form reefs around the shores. Hagfish swim too close and go into toxic shock, floating belly up until they recover and swim away. Some creatures have adapted to dive into the brine briefly, feeding on the bacteria that thrive in the toxic soup. These underwater lakes challenge our understanding of what lakes are, what oceans are, where one body of water ends and another begins. They're boundaries within boundaries, worlds within worlds, each with its own chemistry, its own ecosystem, its own story. Sedamounts, underwater mountains, aren't static. They're among the most dynamic geological features on Earth, though their movement is measured in geological time. As tectonic plates move over hotspots in the Earth's mantle, chains of seamounts form. The Hawaiian Islands are just the tips of a seamount chain that extends thousands of miles across the Pacific floor. Each seamount was once a volcanic island that subsided below the waves as the plate moved away from the hotspot. These sunken islands carry with them the ghosts of their terrestrial past. Guyot's flat-top seamounts were once islands with beaches and coral reefs. Now thousands of feet down, they still have beach sand, fossilized palm trees, the bones of land animals that once lived there. They're time capsules of lost worlds, Atlantis in reality, if not in myth. Seamounts create their own weather. As ocean currents hit these underwater mountains, they're forced upward, bringing nutrients from the deep. This upwelling creates oases of productivity in the nutrient-poor open ocean. Some seamounts are so productive they can be detected from space by the plankton blooms they create. Each seamount develops its own unique ecosystem, often with species found nowhere else. A single seamount might have dozens of endemic species, evolved in isolation like Darwin's finches on the Galapagos. When bottom trawling destroys a seamount ecosystem, it might erase species that exist nowhere else on Earth. The deep ocean is the engine that drives Earth's climate. The global thermohaline circulation, often called the ocean conveyor belt, is a planet-wide system of currents that moves heat from the equator to the poles and brings oxygen to the deep sea. It works like this. In the North Atlantic, cold, salty water becomes dense and sinks, flowing south along the ocean floor. This deep current travels around Antarctica, where it's joined by more cold water, then flows into the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Eventually, it warms and rises, flowing back at the surface to complete the circuit. One complete cycle takes about 1,000 years. This conveyor belt is why Europe is warm, despite being at the same latitude as Canada. It's why the deep ocean has oxygen, despite being far from the surface. It's the circulatory system of the planet, and it's driven by the deep sea. But the conveyor is slowing. As Arctic ice melts, fresh water floods the North Atlantic, making the water less dense, less likely to sink. Some models predict the conveyor could shut down entirely if warming continues. If it does, Europe would freeze, the deep ocean would lose oxygen, and weather patterns worldwide would shift catastrophically. The deep ocean is also Earth's largest carbon sink. It has absorbed about 30% of the CO2 we've emitted since the Industrial Revolution. This carbon is stored in the deep for centuries, keeping it out of the atmosphere. But this service comes at a cost. The ocean is becoming more acidic, dissolving shells and corals, changing the chemistry that life has depended on for millions of years. Frozen in the deep ocean sediments are vast deposits of methane hydrate, methane trapped in ice crystals. There's more carbon locked in methane hydrates than in all the world's coal, oil, and conventional natural gas combined. These deposits are stable only under specific conditions of cold temperature and high pressure. If the ocean warms or sea levels drop significantly, the hydrates could destabilize, releasing massive amounts of methane into the ocean and atmosphere. Methane is a greenhouse gas 25 times more potent than CO2. This has happened before. The Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, 56 million years ago, saw a massive release of methane that warmed the planet by 5 to 8 degrees Celsius. It took 200,000 years for the climate to recover. Some scientists worry we could trigger a similar event. Already, methane is bubbling up from the Arctic seafloor as permafrost thaws and hydrates destabilize. Craters on the Siberian seafloor show where methane explosions have occurred. The deep sea holds a climate gun, and warming is slowly pulling the trigger. Scientists are creating a deep-sea communication network, an internet of the abyss. Sensors on the seafloor monitor earthquakes, temperature, and chemistry. Autonomous vehicles patrol predetermined routes. Cabled observatories provide real-time video from the deep. The Ocean Observatories Initiative has installed 900 kilometers of cable on the seafloor, powering instruments that stream data continuously. We can now watch hydrothermal vents in real time, observe the daily migrations of deep-sea creatures, monitor the ocean's vital signs from our offices. This network is revealing patterns we never knew existed. Daily vertical migrations of billions of organisms, the largest migration on Earth, happening every night as deep-sea creatures rise to feed in surface waters. Earthquakes that don't register on land seismometers, but reshape the seafloor. Chemical pulses that travel thousands of miles, carrying messages we don't yet understand. But the network also reveals our impact. Cameras show plastic bags drifting past at 20,000 feet. Sensors detect the acoustic pollution from ships thousands of miles away. The pH measurements show acidification advancing faster than predicted. We're watching in real time as we change an ecosystem we barely understand. The deep sea floor contains riches that make the California gold rush look like a child's treasure hunt. Polymetallic nodules containing manganese, nickel, copper, and cobalt. Seafloor massive sulfides rich in gold, silver, and rare earth elements. Cobalt crusts containing platinum and tellurium. These resources are essential for green technology. Electric car batteries need cobalt and nickel. Solar panels need tellurium. Wind turbines need rare earth elements. The irony is painful. To save the planet from climate change, we might destroy the deep ocean. Mining companies are already testing equipment, massive robots that would crawl across the seafloor, vacuuming up nodules and sediment, processing ships that would separate ore from waste, dumping the tailings back into the ocean. The sediment plumes could travel hundreds of miles, smothering filter feeders, clogging gills, burying eggs. The nodules themselves are ecosystems. They take millions of years to form and harbor unique species. A single mining operation could destroy habitats that took longer to develop than humans have existed. We're preparing to clear-cut forests we've never walked through, to strip mine mountains we've never climbed. The International Seabed Authority is developing regulations, but enforcement in the deep sea is nearly impossible. How do you police an area twice the size of the moon's surface, 7 miles underwater? In international waters, the gold rush is coming, and the deep sea has no sheriff. Biopiracy, the theft of genetic resources, is already happening in the deep sea. Companies are patenting genes from deep sea organisms, claiming ownership of genetic sequences that evolved over millions of years. One company has patented genes from deep sea bacteria that could be used to create biofuels. Another has claimed rights to antifreeze proteins from Arctic fish. The genetic heritage of the deep sea is being carved up and sold, often without any benefit to the nations in whose waters these organisms live. The potential profits are enormous. A single compound from a deep-sea sponge could be worth billions as a cancer drug. Enzymes from hydrothermal vent bacteria could revolutionize industry. The deep sea might hold the cure for Alzheimer's, the solution to antibiotic resistance, the key to sustainable agriculture. But who owns these resources? The organisms live in international waters, or in the waters of developing nations that lack the technology to exploit them. Rich nations and corporations are racing to claim what they can, a biological colonialism that takes genes instead of gold. I remember the first time I saw footage from a deep-sea submersible. I was 8 years old watching a nature documentary, and suddenly there was this anglerfish on the screen, jaw unhinged, teeth like broken glass, that impossible light dangling from its head. I didn't sleep that night, not from fear, but from a kind of vertigo. The idea that such a creature shared my planet, that it was swimming in darkness at that very moment, changed something fundamental in how I saw the world. That anglerfish became my gateway drug to the deep sea. I read every book I could find, watched every documentary, learned the Latin names of creatures I would never see. I filled notebooks with drawings of bioluminescent jellyfish and giant squids. My bedroom walls were covered with pictures of the abyss, but it wasn't just fascination with the alien. It was the realization that Earth itself was alien, that the familiar world I knew was a thin exception to a vast rule. Most of our planet was pressure and darkness and impossible life. The normal world of sunlight and air was the aberration. We were the weird ones, not the anglerfish. I dream of the deep sea often. Not nightmares, but something between dream and memory, as if I'm remembering something I've never experienced. In these dreams I can breathe water. The pressure is a comfort, like a full-body embrace. The darkness isn't empty, but full of faint lights, like swimming through a galaxy. Sometimes I dream I'm a whale, diving deep, the pressure squeezing my lungs flat, echolocating through the darkness. The dream whale knows where it's going, following paths whales have followed for millions of years, highways in the darkness mapped in sonar and memory. Other times I dream I'm something stranger, a creature that doesn't exist yet, adapted for pressures we haven't reached, seeing in spectrums we haven't discovered. In these dreams, the deep sea has levels below what we know, depths below the deepest trench, where physics itself starts to bend. I wake from these dreams feeling homesick for a place I've never been, nostalgic for a darkness I've never experienced. They leave me with the strange certainty that consciousness didn't begin on land, that awareness first sparked in the deep darkness, that we're all just visiting the surface. Knowing about the deep sea is a weight, a pressure of its own. Once you know what lives down there, What wonders and horrors share your planet? You can't unknown it. Every piece of plastic I use might end up in the Mariana Trench. Every carbon atom I emit acidifies the abyss. I'm connected to a world I'll never visit, responsible for places I'll never see. This knowledge changes how I see the ocean. That pretty beach is just the edge of an alien world. That seafood dinner grew from nutrients that rose from the abyss. That sea breeze carries molecules that have been to depths that would crush me instantly. But it also changes how I see challenges. When life feels impossible, I think of the anglerfish, waiting in the darkness with infinite patience. When pressure seems unbearable, I remember creatures thriving under the weight of miles of water. When I feel alone, I think of deep-sea octopi living their entire lives in solitude yet still signaling hopefully into the darkness. The deep sea teaches resilience not through inspiration but through example. Life doesn't just survive the impossible, it turns impossibility into opportunity. Darkness becomes a canvas for light, pressure becomes structure, poison becomes food. Every limitation becomes a new form of freedom. We've reached the bottom of our journey. That moment when the submersible touches down on the abyssal plain and stirs up clouds of sediment that hasn't moved in millennia. We've descended through layers of light and darkness, through the familiar into the alien, through knowledge into mystery. What have we found here at the bottom? Life. In forms we never imagined, beauty that needs no audience, persistence that defies logic, mysteries that may outlast our species. We found that Earth is stranger than we knew, that most of our planet is alien territory, that we share this world with creatures that seem designed by dream or nightmare. But we've also found ourselves, in the adaptations of deep-sea creatures, we see metaphors for our own struggles. In their isolation, we recognize our loneliness. In their persistence, we find hope. In their strangeness, we discover that normal is just a local custom, not a universal law. The deep sea is a mirror, but a funhouse mirror, showing us distorted but revealing reflections of life's possibilities. Every creature down there is an answer to the question, what if? What if light were optional? What if pressure were normal? What if darkness were home? As we begin our slow rise back to the surface, leaving the abyssal plain behind, we carry with us more than knowledge. We carry wonder. We carry humility. We carry the certainty that we don't know everything, can't know everything, and that unknowing is not failure but opportunity. The pressure decreases as we rise. That crushing weight that seemed unbearable at first now feels almost friendly, a firm handshake from the abyss. We've adapted, even in our brief visit, to conditions we thought impossible. If we can adapt this quickly, imagine what life has done with millions of years. Light begins to return, first as the faintest ghost of blue, then gradually brightening, but it doesn't feel like escape from darkness anymore. It feels like leaving one room for another, both parts of the same house. The darkness below isn't the basement of the world, it's most of the house. We surface dwellers are just camping in the attic. The moment of breaking through the surface is always shocking. The sudden presence of air, the brightness of even clouded daylight, the sounds of wind and waves. It's like being born again, emerging from the womb of the world into a reality that seems both familiar and strange, but we're not the same as when we descended. We've seen too much, learned too much, wondered too much. The surface world looks different when you know what lies beneath. That calm ocean surface is revealed as a lie, a membrane hiding universes of strangeness. Every wave is the ceiling of an inverted sky, where angels have teeth and devils have lights. The sun, which seemed so dominant before, now seems local, parochial, relevant only to the thin skin of the world. Most of life manages without it, has managed without it, for billions of years. Photosynthesis, which we thought was the foundation of life, is just one strategy among many. The sun is not the emperor of life, just a regional manager. Returning from the deep sea, even imaginatively, comes with responsibility. We've seen what others haven't. We know what others don't. We've witnessed the vulnerability of the invulnerable, the fragility of the eternal, the mortality of the immortal deep. This knowledge demands action, not dramatic action. We're not all going to become marine biologists or deep-sea explorers, but small actions, conscious actions, choosing products without microplastics, supporting sustainable fisheries, voting for leaders who understand that the deep sea is not wasteland but wonderland. More importantly, it demands we share the wonder. Every person who learns about the anglerfish's patient hunger, the vampire squid's defensive ballet, the tube worm's impossible life, becomes a guardian of the deep. Wonder is the first